Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for attending this year's Genealogy Day. My name is Deborah Dudak. I'm from the Fountaindale Public Library in Bolingbrook. Our next session today is with Robert Zielinski. He has a review of ethnicity estimate results from 9 DNA testing companies. I'd like all of you to say that 19 times and then tell me how that goes. All right, so to all of our friends who are watching on the webinars, hello, we're super happy to have you with us. So he's going to give a fantastic presentation, and I will be fielding questions in the webinar. So please give Robert a warm round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. When this Genealogy Day first started, I noticed it was a very unruly crowd. So put your cabbages and rotten tomatoes away. You won't need them for this presentation, but I will catch them just in case. My name is Robert Zielinski. I'm a genetic genealogist and a biologist. And I am going to be looking at something that a lot of people are talking about nowadays, ethnicity estimates. And this is something that I just said, okay, I wanted to find out more about that because, you know, I kind of know where I come from, but sometimes, you know, that you might find something different out that might lead you down a path of self-destruction, because if you start looking genealogically, you might be going and chasing your tail. Let me see here. I am from Frankfort, Indiana. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, but I moved down there a couple years ago. And I was in line for the Genealogy Day registration over here, and I said, this conference better be, these speakers better be good, because I drove from central Indiana over here. And of course, I'm one of the speakers. But I provide a whole bunch of different kind of services, and my clients are global. I get emails from all over the world asking me some questions, because once on the internet, it becomes a global arena. You remember this guy, right? So I took an ancestry test to find out my ethnicity. I thought I had German ancestry, but laddies and lasses. Turns out I'm Scottish. Now, I knew I was Polish. Then I found out I was Eastern European, and I was disappointed. So, many direct-to-consumer DNA testing companies include ethnicity estimates. That's to get you in as part of your DNA results. It's also basically considered a test for entertainment purposes. Results can vary between companies and contain surprises or even disappointment. And this presentation reviews the results from 9 DNA testing companies, talks about population data sets and which tests have higher resolution for specific geographic regions. After taking all these 9 different tests, I am now poor. So let's talk about what are they doing with these ethnicity tests? How are they coming about with their percentages that you've seen? So your DNA is compared to a reference panel. This is basically DNA that's from different areas in the world from those regions. Reference panels are based from people in specific regions with deep roots in that area. And each company has a different number of reference panels. The more panels, the higher the resolution. They don't have the same data. They're looking at different data sets from around the world. Some have bigger data sets than others. And your ethnicity estimate should be compared to your family tree. Again, like Steve was talking about. Compare that information that you get. Is it really showing something that is real? Does it match? If not, are the results accurate? Here's what we're going to be covering. You've heard some of the names already as well, and I'm going to add some other ones to this mix. Family tree DNA, AncestryDNA, 23andMe, Living DNA, MyHeritage, telomeres, GPS origins, and anybody could pronounce that? Inside of me. Ah, I was on the flight to call him up. I said, like, I'd like to talk to some. And he says, you're calling inside of me? And I'm like, I thought it was Incitome. So, and the Genographic Project as well. So let's dive into this. Oh, by the way, did I mention after taking all these tests, I'm now poor? So, Family Tree DNA, begin your journey over at Family Tree DNA. They offer a whole bunch of different, it's an a la carte system over there. The Y-DNA, mtDNA, and autosomal tests. But they have a thing called My Origins. And so at Family Tree DNA, I get a result that they give them in blobs of color. And I find out that I'm 98% European and 98% basically Eastern European. I had a friend, actually a colleague of mine, who was a Slawinski, but they changed their name to Stone back in the day. And he called me up and said, hey, Robert, I can't believe, it's amazing. You have one ethnic area on your results from My Origins. I didn't know how he got my results, but I guess we do share because we're co-volunteer administrators at Family Tree DNA. And he goes, most people have multiple areas with their ethnicity estimates. He goes, Robert, you're a thoroughbred. I said, Paul, I'm more likely to be inbred. So, let's find out what panels they use, what areas do they use. So if they have several different breakdowns, there's the African, New World, Central South Asian, East Asian, Middle Eastern, European, and Jewish diaspora. So basically they're looking at different percentages. They'll show you what percentage you are, but I wanted to show you basically what panels they have associated with their. So if African is South Central African, East Central African, West African, and we'll go to like European, basically covering British Isles, East Europe, Finland, Scandinavia, Southeast Europe, Iberia, West and Central Europe. This is just to give you an idea where they look at their populations to provide you with an estimate. And it's basically what you match the closest to. And that is a relatively generic number of areas that they take the panel, the reference panel from.
You're limited with that too as to how far back or where you can take your information. You can't really grow with that information.
Oh, as far as like what can you actually do with your ethnicity, but you really can't grow with that information. As I said initially, it is for entertainment purposes at first. There are ways you can use that to give you like a divining rod to figure out if there's something going on that you should really look into. But again, you might be chasing your tail if you try to put too much effort into it. So the thing is, you have to follow solid leads to make that information useful and to grow with that. I do agree with what you're saying, though. And AncestryDNA essentially has, that was the only autosomal test, but they provide you with that ethnicity estimate. Back in 2014, and essentially these ethnicity estimates are expanding, they're growing over time. And in 2014, these were the areas that they covered globally. But if you notice that if you have ethnicities, anything from South America or North America, you were basically grouped into one group. And if you anywhere from in Asia, that was just basically one group. And you know, a lot of the majority of the time, there's a lot of differentiation in Europe. The majority of the testers, even before that, have European descent. So there's a lot more information associated with that. Now, these are the areas that they cover from Africa, America, Asia, Europe, Pacific Islander, West Asia. A little bit more than what Family Tree DNA uses. This is back in 2014. And that has actually been updated a little bit more. In 2018, a little bit more differentiation, not much, but a lot more differentiation going on in the eastern part of the eastern hemisphere. And so you get a lot more information potential from that. But we're going to dig deeper a little bit into this to find out, you know, what are these subcategories that they have. So for me, they came up with a couple of different areas, mostly not only Eastern Europe, but in the area of Russia and the Baltic states as well. So this gives you a little information of where they categorize me in there. But we'll go into each one of these little locations to show you that in Africa, they are covering a number of different sub-regions within that. So instead of just basically saying you're taking a test and say, well, you have some African in you, they can at least start getting a little bit closer to what region they would be in. And we'll cover some of the other ones as well. So in the Americas, they're starting to differentiate over here as well. And I think there's even more differentiation as well. We'll go into that. Yeah, of course, if you have Native American ancestry within Mexico and the peninsulas that go between South America and North America, essentially they are starting to come up with subgroups within those regions. They're finally getting to the point where they're getting enough resolution so you can provide, can get more information to see what potential regions you are. Yes, sir.
When are they going to tell me how much Neanderthal I have? I find it interesting.
When are they going to tell you how much Neanderthal you have? Well, there's only a couple testing companies that do that. That'll be the genographic test. That'll be 23andMe. And then there's IncytoMe, which will provide you with information about that. So there are only a certain number of companies that do that. But IncytoMe has also more about traits associated with what percentage traits you have with Neanderthals. And for example, we're digressing a little bit, but the only trait that I have in common with Neanderthals is their ability to learn. Yeah. And the thing is that Neanderthals, they're suspecting were visual learners. And I am a very big visual learner. I like to look. And I bring things in with my eyes and stuff like that. I'm a very visual learner. I'm really poor at math. So that's conceptual. That's why I'm a biologist. So they talk a little about South American migrations. And so these are maps essentially that show you that they've been doing their homework. Now these is nothing that I match, but essentially I wanted to show you that they've been upping the ante regarding this to the point where now you can get a lot more resolution. So I think we'll cover also what has changed over time with their estimates as well. But they're giving look at the concentric circles. They're all over the place at this point, and a lot of them overlap. But it'll give you an idea potentially where your DNA has been that has gotten into you basically over time. And Pacific Islander is one of the ones as well. Talking about West Asia and Middle East, they're starting as I wanted to show you this many because if you really don't look, you won't see all these areas. You just basically see the map, and you won't see it that especially if you're helping other people as well that have taken DNA tests. To look at that. So look at the other areas in Asia that they have, including India, Southeast Asia, and even incorporating part of of Russia as well. Okay, so through AncestryDNA, I did my test, and I've already said I'm 98% European and 98% Eastern European based on family tree DNA. Well, AncestryDNA says I'm 95% Europe East, and I've got a couple other smidge regions in there as well. So that we're going to cover this part of that DNA story. And so this is a pre-2018 estimate. They're basically saying that the majority of this is Eastern Europe with a couple of the subregions that they have and some echoes of distant relations in the past of different parts of Europe as well. A little bit different than what family tree DNA said. I'm no longer a thoroughbred anymore. In fact, if anything, I'm taking bits and pieces of DNA from all over Europe. And that is 2018, and it updated basically in September 2018. They changed my ethnicity estimate. But the funny thing is that before they showed me the reveal, essentially, they said, Robert, do you mind if we show you a new estimate that we've come up with? Do I mind? I'm like, nobody's ever asked me from a DNA company if I would be insulted, or do I mind if they change their algorithm. I said, sure, bring it on, bring it on. So I did it, and I went, I gasped, and I went, this is different. So this is basically showing that it is Eastern European. All these other ones just kind of fell by the wayside. Okay, so you're saying what the value is that when you have an ethnicity estimate you get 1 year, and all of a sudden they change the algorithm, it's changed now. However, this is a lot more accurate than I think it was. And it also focuses on subpopulations within these areas as well, which is really nice to see. So I was pretty happy to see what they had. And these are the, they also, these are the areas that they're looking at, but they also have all these ones in the United States as well, these settler areas that you will be tied to as well through your DNA. And that is why they said they have so many different ethnicity populations and panels that they're looking at, because they're garnering information from the people who are participating as well to show that they have deep ancestry within the United States for several generations. And they're basically providing you with information about what, let's say if you were a Central Appalachian settler, essentially within your DNA that you have, that you could be related to those people that were part of that group. So this is an expansion that is like welcome, because normally they're just saying, okay, everybody from Europe or everywhere else but the United States. But now they're including the information that they're getting about people's DNA within the United States, within those settler populations, which is very exciting to see, because it kind of brings things home a little bit closer to home, so you have an idea if there's something surprising that might come up. So what happens essentially is that you take a DNA test, go back and every once in a while check to see if anything's changed. You may or may not get an email saying they've updated something, but every couple of years they do change the way they look at it, and they change their algorithm so that essentially you might have more information that you can use that potentially would make you give you a chance to grow with that. So this is a part of the groups essentially that I would be associated with. These are like the diaspora from Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. And these are areas that I know if I went to, I could find a Polish deli. So, I know I'm getting hungry now. But this is kind of interesting because it allows you to show these are like major populations of these types of people that moved and where they moved to. It's historical, if anything. Let's move on to 23andMe. Now, I find it very interesting that no matter what testing company you go to, you're always going to be 100% of you, no matter what. But at 23andMe, they have a very extensive network of panels that they've used as well. And you could tell on TV that it's like George Foreman versus some other competitor, essentially. Ancestry versus 23andMe, and they're trying to garner your attention by giving you the bestest ethnicity estimates they can come up with, right? Well, they are really doing a good job, to tell you the truth. That's why that competitive market for them is helping you out in the end. So the 23andMe regions, these is basically 2017 to 2018. Notice that this is kind of vague right here still. But there's a lot more of a breakdown of what's going on within Europe, Africa, and in Asia. And so that's kind of helpful. And for a long time, they had some of the best ethnicity estimates on the market. But something started changing after a while. Let's go into what I came up with mine. So in 23andMe, basically up to 2018, this looks different than the rest of them that we've seen so far, right? Similarities between family tree DNA, well, that was a blob there, but now Ancestry had more information over here. But 23andMe is saying I have a little bit of East Asian in there. Now, if you have Eastern European genetics, and you have a little bit of East Asian in there. Where do you think historically that might have come from? Mongols. Soviet Union, but also the Mongols, right? This is the only testing company that said I have East Asian DNA. It's like a smidge, like here we go, right here. Broadly East Asian, 0.1%. Okay, personally, if anything is under 3%, I don't really look at it very seriously. It's more for entertainment at that point. That's a very small percentage. Anything above the 25% range and higher is something that you should significantly take a look at. But this is 23andMe in 2018. This sparked me to try a testing company called TeloYears. And TeloYears specializes in East Asian DNA. And I'm going to nail down my East Asian group with TeloYears. Wait, you'll see what happens with TeloYears in a couple minutes here. So 23andMe 2018. Look at the East Asian part of me now. All gone. Much tighter now. Still, this area very similar to what Ancestry is coming up with. But they're also coming up with some areas of Southern European and Western and Northern. But they're still saying it mostly 93.7% Eastern European, including Poland, Russian, a couple more, a little bit of French and German, Greek and Balkan, a little bit of Scandinavian, and the only company that says I have a little smidge of Ashkenazi in me as well. The only company that said that. Now that's possible, but it's a very small amount at that point. I would literally have to find in that genealogical record who that person would be. And the question of whether or not they would even know that they were Jewish or not. You know, the name might not suggest it. It could be also somebody who changed their name or changed their religion sometimes. So it's hard to say unless there is a actual genealogical paper trail that I could follow. I have not been able to find that. Let me see what else is going on here. Okay, so they have 175 tested populations within their database that they use. So they talk about your European background, or mine essentially, and they basically say that for anything with Poland essentially, I have a highly likely match with that ethnicity. And that will possible match and possible match. So basically saying the highest likely match is that I'm Polish. Let me see. So 93% of ancestry is Eastern European. That's great. They show a great picture of Eastern Europe on the background over there. And again, they give you a little bit of information about. They're starting to provide tidbits of information. The one thing about 23andMe is that if you actually surf the site a little bit more, you get a lot of information that you didn't know even was there. Just scroll down, and there'll be little snippets of information about your DNA or information about geographic areas. Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was scratching my...
Oh, okay, that's fine.
There was a question, and since we're on it, they also assign you to a group like H5A and stuff like that. And if you get into the deep roots, it shows up. You can take that information. They don't do that with Ancestry, I don't think, anymore, do they?
No, Ancestry used to do Y-DNA and mtDNA testing, and they stopped doing that. They changed labs as well. But 23andMe does provide your Y-DNA and mtDNA information. It is not the most highest resolution test, but it gives you an idea what genetic group you belong to, and so that if you wanted to go any further with that, you would have to switch over to a family tree DNA test to go to the highest level test.
Or a lot more reading like 7 Daughters of Eve.
Which is now out of date, but
Yes,
there's a lot of information that's available out there, and I use that 7 Daughters of Eve for saying that if you belong to the haplogroup H, he related to Helena and things like that as the name, so you can relate to have a human aspect. That's fine. You can ask as we go here. So for here, they talk about, this is really light on the screen, but this is the general areas where they're talking about I have matches, But I wanted to show something very interesting because this is the first company that nailed it. They were talking about 16 administrative regions within Poland. And the borders of Poland have changed over time. But this is looking something within the more recent past through my genetics, and essentially saying that Mazovian voivodeship, with each of these basically states are called województwo in Polish. But this is the area where my father's family is from. And this is the area around here where my mother's family is from. So this is the highest resolution I've seen. Instead of this big blob in the middle of Eastern Europe, they're starting to get population data sets that actually can get you down to these subpopulations. It's not going to get you down to the ancestral village, where if you're on Google Earth, you click on your ancestral village and there's somebody screaming, "Hey, I'm your relative," So it's not getting that good yet, but we'll see. Over time, it may change. But as you can see right now, they've changed the way. This is a competitive market now between them and Ancestry, and Ancestry hasn't gotten this resolution just yet. In some parts of the world, like in the British Isles, there's more refined panels, so you can get a little bit further than that. But let me see. Also talk about areas within Russia. They actually talk about a specific state within Russia that potentially would have a relative that I might be able to find out. Let's go on to living DNA. We talked a little. Steve talked a little bit about that before. I took the test over there, and I knew they specialized in, hold on a second, in British Isles. And so I wanted to find out, I did see some British Isles sneaking back and forth in there. I wanted to see if there was any merit to that, to see if they really said, we've got the British Isles, panel, we'll tell you or not if you have that or not. So, yes, question?
When the Americas were included all together, you said it was lumped together?
Mm-hmm.
Does that include Cuba?
No. It did not. Now, they have actually, they have a panel that's separate for like the West Indies area instead. That's different than that. I can, in fact, I can help you with that if you have some questions about it a little bit later. But yeah, I did notice that they do have a panel. I didn't put all the ancestry panels in that they showed on there, but that is one of the panels that they look at. So with living DNA, my overview is I have 79% Europe East, 17.8% Great Britain and Ireland, and 1.9% Europe North and West. Okay, there's some overlap with some of the panels from the other companies. Let's take a look at about what their thing looks like. You can look at different levels of resolution on their website. So right now, this is a complete or just general, and basically looking at it as a global sweep of what my ethnicity is. So right now, this is basically saying I am 100% European. And as you change from the different tabs over here, from complete to standard to cautious, I don't know why they use the word cautious over there. It must be a little British thing that they say that doesn't mean much. Well, for me, it means like, whoa. So, like, don't go there. Let's go to the next one. It shows basically, it goes from that to, yeah, this is probably the next step.
This is standard?
This is standard. Going to Europe East and then Great Britain and Ireland shows more of a breakdown of what's going on. But in Britain, it just shows the eastern coast over there. Now, eastern coast, for me, that I know historically, is more associated with Viking invasions. But then we have Central and Eastern Europe, Central Europe and Eastern Europe on the left-hand side. So there's a little bit of stuff like that, but mostly it's Eastern European. So far, for the majority of the tests that I've taken within this list, they've gotten the Eastern European part pretty much right. Now, again, there's a couple things that are popping up. Let me see, what else do I have on this one here? Let's go into even more. This shows a regional review at the complete. A little bit of Southern European starts showing up in that. So as the resolution changes, and we'll go to now subregions within the complete, and it starts breaking things down. there is a little bit, I don't know if it takes too much time to do all this work, but to look at that, the question is like, what are you really getting out of this? And I guess it's for entertainment purposes at this point. They're still showing in subregions in the UK more subregional information, and now this pops up a little bit here. So I'm just showing that they are trying to refine this within their own company to show that you have different levels to play with, essentially, when you get on their website. There's one more I've got over here, which is, it looks like it's the standard, and it shows more of a breakdown by region. And this is the Great British one, the Great Britain and Ireland, a little bit of North Yorkshire, Devon and Northumbria, and South Yorkshire, so that they have a little bit of assignment to there. Now, I don't know whether that is actually true or not, but I went to them because I thought that if I have any British and Irish ancestors, that they might be able to weed out the fact that my DNA might be from there. So this is the cautious, don't go there, regional portion of that. So this is saying, okay, and we're getting more broader areas now, which I thought was very strange, but basically they're saying that Northeast Europe related ancestry is now 55%. I'm not sure where they're going with some of these things because it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. What they're doing is they're putting filters on their algorithm so that you can see what you want to see out of it. Oh, by the way, they gave me my YDNA and mtDNA results as well. They did get my mtDNA results initially wrong, very wrong, but I contacted them and they realized that my results are so similar to the Cambridge sequence that they use to determine your mitochondrial genetic group that the computer bumped me over to a different genetic group, and I pointed that out to them, and they went, "Oh my gosh, yeah, we figured out what happened, and that you were so closely related to that panel that they thought it was a different group by mistake, and so they corrected it, and they did get it right when they corrected it. I didn't tell them what group I belonged to." Let's go. Yes, go ahead. Question.
Within UK, they specialize in the UK. How many regions do they break the UK into? Do you happen to know? Is it just those main 4?
No. It seems like there's about 8 to 10 of them over there, and it is useful if you have British and Irish ancestry to use that service. But I took the test not only to show it to see if I had any, but I also wanted to find out to show other people that it's useful for them to use as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think they have segmented Britain down to 40 different segments.
If the resolution now, the gentleman's saying that up to about 40 different locations or regions within England. Let's move on to MyHeritage. Okay. MyHeritage is closely related actually to Family Tree DNA. They are working together, but they're based in Israel as compared to the Family Tree DNA, which is based in Houston, Texas. They also provide ethnicity estimates. And this is kind of an explanation of what's going on. You don't need to read the whole thing, but what I'm trying to get out of this is remember that your ethnicity estimates at the bottom, which are the result of highly accurate statistical algorithm, are still estimates. Some global populations exhibit similar DNA due to proximity and the mingling of populations. Well, we talked about mingling a little earlier, but I would say that we as humans move around a lot. So there's going to be a lot of mixing here and there. One of the reasons that Genographic Project in National Geographic was trying to get as many indigenous populations DNA tested is because essentially, eventually over time, a lot of these populations are going to be exposed to each other, and essentially that's going to be a lot of DNA mixing happening, and so you won't be able to capture those populations as they were in the past. So again, there's global mixing at that point. That's why you're seeing differences between testing companies because their panels are showing similarities. They're matching you to the closest related one that their algorithm can fit you into. Doesn't mean it's right. Okay, so at MyHeritage, essentially they look at very similar types of areas as Family Tree DNA does. And you'll see that my results here are very similar to Family Tree DNA, except they're talking a little bit of a smidge of Western European, the majority being Eastern European. So essentially what we're finding out is that I'm still 100% Robert Slowinski, but that they have slightly different algorithms they use from Family Tree DNA, but they're very similar as far as the results that you get from those two testing companies. And you can actually break it down, and I'll click on that, and it'll show you slightly different polygons on here. That's a little bit more representative with the names of the countries associated with that. So 93% Eastern European, so we're still in the 90% range. 1 second, please. And then 7% North and Western European. I'm going to have to still try to figure out. So as I go through the testing companies, I'm going to find out there are a couple of them that are showing me North and West Europe. There may be some merit to that, and I have to see as time goes by if this ever drops off. If it does not drop off, I'm going to start doing a little bit more research on there to find out, you know, if there are people. But sometimes people come to another country, from another country, and they don't always say that they're from there because after over a certain number of generations, that information gets lost in your family legacy until you start doing the paperwork on that. So these are the areas that they cover as well in more detail. So they have a little bit more information than what Family Tree DNA is, and a lot less than Ancestry or 23andMe, but it still covers quite a number of different areas as well. Okay, how are we doing on time here? 12. Teloyears. So I told you about that I had some East Asian, a smidge from 23andMe that I wanted to find. I'm going to nail down that tribe in China that I'm from. So I said, okay, teloyears, I'm going to give you my money, and I'm going to find out, you know, what part of Asia, what group that I belong to. Here's the reveal. Okay, so they have a couple of different confidence levels. They have a high confidence level and a medium confidence level. Well, okay, I am 100% European. Okay, I can understand that. At the high confidence level, my highest percentage is 32.69% British Isles. Okay, so other testing companies have said pretty much I'm in the 90% range for being Eastern European. The only one that's come up here is 17% Russian, or Russia, on that confidence high level. So let's go to the medium confidence level. 100% European still, great. Still, highest level is 31% British Isles. And so that hasn't changed that much. So I'm kind of questioning, and there's no East Asian on there. Where did that go? So who is telling me, who's fibbing to me? I want to know. Yeah. Okay, and they also have now let's break down the European. That was the global. Let's liberate the European one. And finally, Eastern Europe shows up at 7.53%. Let me see, Northeastern Europe, 21.6%. I don't know where they're going with this. It's a little bit confusing. So I was first trying to see if they could capture the East Asian. They didn't find it on their panel, and they have an extensive number of populations within Eastern Asia that they have to review and through their algorithm, but none of them showed up over here. And the ones that showed up here for me aren't even close to the other companies. So I'm taking a pass at them as far as the accuracy of their ethnicity estimates. I also took a test from the Geno 2.0, which is from Genographic. It is no longer associated with National Geographic. They're broke out on their own, and Helix is associated with that, a company called Helix. and but the prices are a lot more reasonable than they were just even a couple years ago. But according to them, I'm one of 960,000 participants associated with that. It's a pretty big database. I was looking to see if they could find an ethnicity estimate for me that would be even more accurate, because I told you about how they're looking at indigenous populations and they're getting the DNA from those populations. I'm thinking maybe they have a little bit better panels than everybody else because they've collected from all over the world. Okay, and they're basically talking about that regional ancestry goes from 500 years to 10,000 years ago. I'm like, okay, they have different little videos you can watch as well, but let's find out where they put me in the scope of the world. Bam, here we go. Thoroughbred, once again. Okay. So I'm thinking here, the highest resolution, the best panels, best in data they can find, and they still pop me into one little category right there. Okay, fine. So my ancestors have been in that area for a very long time according to their algorithm. Let's take a look at what they talk about here. Eastern European, basically, is that it's 100% Eastern European. Well, we understand that. Let's go on to some of the panels reference panels that they have. One of them is Bulgarian that they have, and they have another one that's Polish as well. But they compare basically their information within a Bulgarian panel and then me. And then no matter what, I don't have much of anything else except this Eastern European portion.
You're Asians back there again. Asia Minor?
This is them.
Oh,
this is me.
Okay.
So that's fine, yes. So if that would come up,
yeah,
it would show up on this panel.
Okay.
That's true. So yeah, they're showing you what they have on their panel and what I don't have. So it's okay. Okay, this is my second reference population is Polish. And it talks about Eastern European as well. So 75% of that panel is Eastern European, Jewish diaspora, 50% Northeastern European, 8% Asia Minor, 2%. I have none of the ones underneath Eastern Europe at all. So that's why they're putting me in one lump right there. So are you starting to see that there are differences between the different testing companies and see how they do things and where they place you? But wait. I can go to Home DNA and pinpoint my ancestry. GPS Origins offers DNA results with a level of specificity no other test can replicate. Discover your true story. I couldn't type in my credit card information fast enough. Start now. Okay, let's see what GPS Origins has to say about me. Okay, these are my gene pool percentages, and this is the map with the blobs on it that you'll see. Do you see any Eastern European on that? I don't. But I see a little bit of France, a little bit of Britain. Wait a minute. Isn't this Iceland over here? I know, yeah, yar. So, okay. There's Scandinavia on there. So what they're looking at is they have me at 23.9% Phenoscandia. Anybody ever hear of that? Yes, it is a geographic area, essentially, Northern Europe. North Europe, essentially. Southern France, Orkney Islands. Now, when I see Orkney Islands and Phenoscandia, this is like the panels that I saw that Family Tree DNA was using over 10 or 15 years ago, when everybody was, even the Eastern European, East Asian, where you were from the Orkney Islands, essentially, because that's the reference panel that they had at the time. So I'm like thinking, okay, let's go into something else that they might be able to tell me. And I saw this, and I'm like, wow. They put a balloon on one of my ancestors, and they had them like march around Europe to. And I was like, you gotta be kidding. This is very specific. We're talking about like, okay, we got subregions down at 23andMe. Now we've got actual locations that somebody will has the same DNA as I do. but which one is male and which one is female? Uh-oh. Please note, GPS origins test is an autosomal SNP test that is not gender specific. Although both migration patterns represent your maternal and paternal DNA routes, we do not differentiate which route is maternal and which is paternal. So which one is it? And why are there travel routes between these different areas? And they're pretty specific because they have animation on there that has this arrow bouncing all the way over here and then bouncing all the way down there. So I'm not sure which one is paternal or which one is maternal at this point, because they're not pointing to any area that is actually where my ancestors are from. So I don't even know what time frame that is. So that's limited information as far as that. However, what do they have on here? So migration route B, we'll give some more information, gives you latitude and longitude and the radius of that location where possible, a DNA match, not a match, but a DNA, what would you call it? I guess it would be a match. Your ancestors' DNA originated in this area. Doesn't say which one, doesn't say male or female or like that. It just kind of leaves it hanging up in the air. Still working on trying to figure out what that means. Okay. A lot of words up there. Okay. By identifying the origins of your deep ancestral roots, you can now explore areas to further research and discover more about how your ancestors lived. Okay, when you start looking at that, that is essentially for entertainment purposes. Because if you just found regions like, okay, what happened in this region from now until oblivion, right, before time. And there's a lot of things that have happened, and a lot of migrations that have happened, so you're really not learning that much about your ancestry with this ethnicity estimate. They're talking about using a database of over 10,000 signatures from over 500 populations. That's a lot more than some of the other ones, but they really don't tell you which populations they're working with. You have no clue about what's going on. Let's go to Inside of Me. Yes. Inside of Me was started by Dr. Spencer Wells, who was formerly of the Genographic Project. He and Razib Khan, who I've met both of them, and they started a very interesting company that is more a la carte regarding DNA testing. Most people have already tested with other companies, so they want to do something a little more specific to certain things. Let me see, and I'll cover what they cover as far as ethnicity. So if you want to find out more about Neanderthal in you, which the portion of the human population carries up to about 4% Neanderthal. And these are mostly populations that are outside of Africa. Let's talk about ethnicity estimates and regions. Now, Inside of Me has provided a little bit more regional differences between the Americas, essentially, and has a number of ones that are in Europe, Asia, Africa, and South Asia. So I wanted to find out what mine was, and then right now they're saying European is basically 93% for me. And Middle East, North Africa is 7%. That's a new one now. That's every testing company. There's something. It's like the surprise at the bottom of a cereal box. You know you're going to get something down there, but you never know if it's going to be the right toy. So, but they're saying Africa, America, Asia, nothing on that. So I'm looking at that, going, okay, what's going on with this? So again, they're another company that is using has set up reference panels, and they're basically showing me as 67% Eastern European, but the big blob is basically on Eastern Europe. There's some little North Mediterranean, Western European, a little bit of Finnish, Sardinian, no Ashkenazi and no Basque on there, but they're basically saying. And so Middle East, North African, 7%. Not sure where that is coming from. But it kind of gives you that each of these companies, they're using different data to come up with your ethnicity estimate. And some of them are more limited than others. We're doing out of time because I think I'm a little fast on these here. 12:20, and we're doing good.
You're doing great.
Okay. Now, let's talk about, answer your question first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've done some testing with various lands, and it shows that it might have a good number of Viking DNA in me. But, you know, I don't know if it's the Norman invasion of Britain or the, you know, invasions of earlier invasions in the eastern part of the
Sure. Gentleman is saying that he has, through DNA testing, found out about like the Vikings.
Is there any testing that might refine that?
Is there any testing that would refine between Norman and the previous Viking invasions into Great Britain? Right now, the Normans essentially were recycled Vikings. They were the Vikings that settled in France. And the previous invasions into England were the original Danes and Norwegians and Swedes. So it's funny because there were some, even though the Swedes went east for the majority part, there are invasions that came from Sweden into Britain as well. There were minor incursions more, but right now there is. You would have to go potentially with another company that I haven't tested with. I'm trying to think of what the name is right now. And they might have some more refining about that, but I don't know. You'd have to have more background of if you have more French ancestry associated with that, or strictly British and Danish or Norwegian. Then you could start splitting that up between the Normans versus the. But again, if you have Norwegians that are moving into Britain and then colonizing the north of France, you might not be able to tell the difference unless there's a lot of mixing going on with the native population. Then you'll be able to probably pull it apart. So let's go through the summary and conclusion regarding this. So this is the list of the companies. We have Family Tree DNA, AncestryDNA, 23andMe, Living DNA, MyHeritage, TeloYears, GPS Origins, Inside of Me, and Genealogy Project. So Family Tree DNA uses, the regions that they use are 24. What is the accuracy? I'm giving you a summation like this kind of study. This is the one-stop shopping place right here. By the way, I do not work for any of these companies. They do not pay me to do any of this. This is basically my own personal money that went into these testing companies so I can find out, as a genetic genealogist, who should I potentially recommend, essentially, without getting paid to do so. 24 regions compared, AncestryDNA, now up to 150, including migration areas as well. I consider them pretty accurate. 23andMe, 31 initially, and then they bumped it up to 175. And I put it as generally accurate, now I bumped it up to accurate. Living DNA has 80 different regions, and they specialize in the UK DNA, and they are partially accurate when it comes down to it. So MyHeritage, 42 regions compared, accurate but kind of vague. It's just these are general blobs on the continents. TeloYears, they have 70 place areas specialized in East Asian DNA, not accurate at all as compared to what I'm looking at. If that was the only test I ever took, I'd be extremely confused. If I knew more other things, like if you have a paper trail that says you are what you are, and they say you're not, then you want your. I did not ask for my money back, but it'd probably take me forever to get that anyway. So GPS Origins, 41 regions they look at, not accurate as far as I can tell at this point. Inside of Me, 28 regions, not a lot, but they're accurate, but a little bit vague at this point. They might be continuing to refine that over time. And Genealogy Project, we have 22 regions compared, which I thought would have the most, but they don't necessarily have. They don't have the most actually. It's accurate, but it's limited at that point. Yes.
I think you mentioned that MyHeritage has quite a few Scandinavians in there. At least that's what I found.
Mm-hmm.
And how would the accuracy of MyHeritage for a person that's Scandinavian Finnish compared to the accuracy of Ancestry? I'm thinking there may be more Scandinavians MyHeritage?
I haven't specifically looked at them. The question is, what is the accuracy potentially for Scandinavian, Finnish, Ancestry compared MyHeritage to, let's say, Ancestry? And the thing is that if you looked at the areas that they look at have geographic breakdowns, the regional breakdowns, you're going to find a lot more on Ancestry. MyHeritage, because it is European, you're going to have more Europeans that have close ties to their ancestry. Testing with that, yeah, MyHeritage has a high level of not only Jewish but also Eastern European ones, and I would suspect that they probably have some of the Scandinavian and Finnish people testing with there, primarily because of proximity of where they're located and shipping and things like that. So if they actually have, we'd have to take a closer look to see how many more they would have. But have you tested with any of these companies at all? Which companies?
Well, I mean, I've tested with Ancestry and then put it into MyHeritage, as you can.
Okay, but if you wanted to release the map, you probably have to pay a little bit additional to release.
I mean, I have the map.
The map and everything. How do you feel it's as comparative to the relationship between the Scandinavian and your?
What I know so far from my paperwork, it looks like Ancestry, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, they have a higher resolution at this point compared to MyHeritage. First question, second question over here.
Which one of these tests would you recommend for an adopted child?
That's a very good question. I've actually been asked that before.
He's going to be 7.
I would say at this time, yes, the question is if there is an adopted child, and which test would you recommend for that, to find out what ethnicity estimates they would be. You've seen the top 2 right here, 23andMe and AncestryDNA. It depends on what you want to do with that. Now, if you want to upgrade to health reports as well, go to 23andMe. If you just want to find out about potential relationships with people, go to Ancestry. They have a lot more sharing with family trees. You will not find a family tree on 23andMe. Then nobody posts their family tree on that. So if it's genealogical,
Who cares about a family tree? She wants to know his ethnicity.
yeah, then I would say that 23andMe would be the best one, because if they want to find out more about health reports as well, if they want to do that. But right now, 23andMe, yes.
Yeah, we're getting one question from upstairs, and I apologize because we're running out of time. We have someone who wants to know about calculators and GEDmatch.
Oh, I don't cover GEDmatch in this presentation.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, great, all right, fantastic.
Thank you.
Was there one more question before we close?
Yes.
I've tested with Family Tree DNA and Ancestry, and by my paper trail, I know I'm Danish, and that nothing shows up Danish. It's Norwegian and Swedish.
Okay. So ladies tested with Ancestry, you said, and Family Tree DNA, having paper trail of Danish heritage, and nothing is showing up associated with that. Now, these populations that they're refining more and more each time, but there's going to be a lot of influence back and forth between Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, as far as that. So the question is, the people that lived in Denmark essentially may have migrated from somewhere else, but it also depends on what the resolution is at this point. I don't think the resolution is as high in that area as it could be, and it might be better in the future for now.
All right, well, we do apologize because we have run out of time. Please give Robert a warm round of applause. It's fantastic. Thank you. Fabulous as always. So we are going to take an hour-long lunch break, which is going to be very, very important. So we are signing off on the webinar for our friends who are watching online. We hope to see you in an hour. And if not, enjoy the rest of your day. And for the people who are in live and in person, be back a little bit before the hour is up. So thank you guys very much. Let's give Rob. Oh.